Hey guys, welcome back. So we are in the module 1 of this Azure fundamentals. So in the last session, we spoke about the different portals, right? So we saw how to customize the start board. So when you create new resources, and add to start board checkbox is available. If you select this checkbox, it will pin a tile to the start board for the new resource that acts as a shortcut to that resource. Then we saw when you right click the start board to put it in edit mode, the options to edit the new tile can be seen in the second figure of this slide. And we saw that there is no undo option here. So you need to be careful when doing this, because if you unpin something, you have to track it down and again repin it. So now let's continue. We will start with the Azure Management Portal. The current production version of the Azure Management Portal is at manage.windowsazure.com. Let's navigate to the same subscription used in the sample for the Azure Preview Portal. After logging in, you can see all of the resources being used in that subscription that you can see in the third figure on this slide. So we have the heading called all items, then the name, type, status, subscription, location. These are the columns, and you can see some rows the status is running, some rows the status is active, some rows the status is created, and you can see the information about the subscription and where it is located and what is the type of the service. Is it a cloud service? Is it a storage account, directory, virtual machine, or a website? So these things you can see in the Azure Management Portal. Now, on the left side of the screen is the list of resources types, which you can see on the first slide, on the first image on this slide. So on the left side of the screen, there is a list of resource types. The displayed list is abbreviated for space. It actually includes all resource types. So you can see websites, virtual machines, mobile services, cloud services, SQL databases, and storage. This list allows you to look at a specific resource type. For example, to look at your VMs, click virtual machines. In our case, this brings up the list of virtual machines that can be seen in the next figure, where you have the instances, images, disks, the name of the instances, the Contoso VM1, Contoso VM2, test Azure files, the status, you can see the subscription, location, the DNS names. The list of resources that are the virtual machines can be seen in this picture. When we click on Contoso VM1, this will open the dashboard for that virtual machine, which you can see in the third figure with the heading Contoso VM1. So this is basically a dashboard You can see other options like monitor, endpoints, configure. Okay, what is the CPU percentage? What is the disk read bytes per second? What is the disk write bytes per second? Okay, and others. You can see the web endpoint status. You have the auto scale status, usage overview, and option for quick glance. The status of this VM1, the DNS name, the host name, public virtual IP, then the internal IP address. All these options you can see. The menu for navigating the various features of the VM is across the top. That is the dashboard, monitor, endpoints, and configure. There is a summary for the performance of the virtual machine and various general information such as the DNS name available. The menu options and dashboard change depending on the type of resource, and the contents of the menu options also rely on the type of the resource. For example, the configure screen for a website has a .NET version, PHP version, Java version, and Python version, but these are not relevant to a virtual machine, so they don't show up on a virtual machine's dashboard. Also, across the bottom is a menu or command bar that is context aware. It changes based on the resource being acted on. For example, for the virtual machines, it looks like the next figure where we have the options of new, connect, restart, shutdown, attach, detach, disk, capture, and delete. The menu also changes depending on the displayed resource. Notifications are displayed at the bottom of the screen, just above the command bar that you can see in the last figure. So these information you can see. The metric CPU percentage shows how much of the physical load of the guest operating system is actually. Note that the CPU percentage guest operating system shows what the guest operating system thinks is being used when the guest operating system is running. To understand how these metrics work, you can we will see how these metrics work in our later sessions. Then we have few more metrics like disk read bytes per second. So this is also one important matrix. So it's designed for high performance. So how to measure your application performance? Why are you not seeing the expected high performance? Which factors influence your application performance on premier storage? How do these factors influence performance of your application on premium storage? How can you optimize for IOPS, bandwidth, and latency? So we assess whether an application is performing well or not using the performance indicators like how fast an application is processing a user request, how much data an application is processing per request, how many requests is an application processing in a specific period of time, how long a user has to wait to get a response after submitting their request. The technical terms for these performance indicators are IOPS, throughput or bandwidth, and latency. In this, we will discuss the common performance indicators in the context of premium storage. So what is IOPS? The input output operations per second is the number of requests that your application is sending to the storage disks in 1 second. An input output operation could be read, write, sequential, or random. OLTP applications like online retail website need to process many concurrent user requests immediately. The user requests are insert and update intensive database transactions, which the application must process quickly. Therefore, OLTP applications require very high IOPS. Such applications handle millions of small and random input-output requests. If you have such an application, you must design the application infrastructure to optimize for IOPS. When you attach a premium storage disk to your high-scale virtual machine, Azure provisions for you a guaranteed number of IOPS as per the disk specification. For example, a P50 disk provisions 7500 IOPS. Each high-scale VM also has a specific IOPS limit that it can sustain. For example, a standard GS5 virtual machine has 80,000 IOPS limit. Next, we will see the throughput. Throughput or bandwidth is the amount of data that your application is sending to the storage disks in a specified interval. If your application is performing input output operations with large input output unit sizes, it requires high throughput. Data warehouse applications tend to use or issue scan intensive operations that access large portions of data at a time and commonly perform bulk operations. In other words, Such applications require higher throughput. If you have such an application, you must design its infrastructure to optimize for throughput. Then the next one is latency. Latency is the time it takes an application to receive a single request, send it to the storage disks, and send the response to the client. This is a critical measure of an application's performance in addition to IOPS and throughput. The latency of a premium storage disk is the time it takes to retrieve the information for the request and communicate it back to your application. Premium storage provides consistent low latencies. Premium disks are designed to provide single digit millisecond latencies for most input output operations. If you enable read only host caching on premium storage, you can get much lower read latency. So all these things you need to take care about the virtual machines in the portal. Next, we will see subscription management and billing. So the available subscriptions, there are several different kinds of subscriptions providing access to Azure services. You must have a Microsoft account or a work or school account to access these subscriptions. So there are several different kinds of subscriptions providing access to Azure services. You must have a Microsoft account or a work or school account issued by an administrator or business for academic use to access these subscriptions. So let's take a look at the most common subscriptions. The one is free trial. The link to sign up for the free trial is on the front page of azure.com. This gives you a $200 credit and a month to try out any combination of resources in Azure. If you exceed your credit amount, your trial will be suspended. At the end of the trial, your services will be decommissioned and will no longer work. You can upgrade this to a pay-as-you-go subscription at any time. The next one we have is MSDN subscriptions. If you have an MSDN subscription, you get a specific amount in Azure credit each month. For example, if you have a Visual Studio Premium with MSDN subscription, you get $100 per month in Azure credit. If you exceed the credit amount, your service will be disabled until the next month starts. You can turn off the spending limit and add a credit card to be used for the additional costs. Some of these costs are discounted for MSDN accounts. For example, you get a 33% discount on Windows virtual machines. This makes MSDN accounts ideal for development and test scenarios. Then we have BizSpark accounts. The BizSpark program provides a lot of benefits to startups, not the least of which is access to all of Microsoft's software for development and test environments for up to 5 MSDN accounts. In addition to these benefits, you get $150 in Azure credit for each of those 5 MSDN accounts, and you pay reduced rates for several of the Azure services, such as Windows virtual machines. The next one we have is pay as you go. With this subscription, you pay for what you use by attaching a credit card or debit card to the account. If you are an organization, you also can be approved for invoicing. Then finally, we have enterprise agreements. With an enterprise agreement, you commit to using a certain amount of services. So, with the enterprise agreement, you commit to using a certain amount of services in Azure over the next year, and you pay that amount ahead of time. The commitment that you make is consumed throughout the year. If you exceed the commitment, you can pay the additional usage quarterly or annually, depending on the amount of the commitment. You get a discount on the services in Azure.